Good morning. I'm Keith Clark, you don't know me, and I'm responsible for the lead delivery partner at the LDP that reports into the Lexon SRO as part of the implementation manager function. You've probably heard me quite a lot, those of you in SIT, speaking about systems integration testing, mainly because it is the most clear and present challenge, or it has been over the last year, to the challenge of the critical path of keeping the show on the road and meeting the timelines. And without reaching success in that area, we're going to have problems reaching overall programme success. So the LDP is responsible for delivering some of the programme work streams like SIT, like programme design management, data management, management assurance of the path to N10, which Jason will speak about after the break, plan for the orchestration of cutover, and also some elements of transition management and so on. But we're also the programme management function, so we're responsible for managing delivery across the whole programme and ensuring that all work streams act in concert in avoiding potential barriers and overcoming actual obstacles. So we have to deliver the programme's required outcomes so the benefits can ultimately be realised and the business case fulfilled. So speaking from the perspective of programme management, what can I tell you about the status of the programme? Well, you probably know it already, right? Because of all programmes I've run in many industries and sectors, this is probably the most well-reported programme I've ever been involved with. We report so much to so many people in so many fora. We do bilateral engagement on an incessant and persistent basis. We're all over you, and you've heard it all before. You know it all. So that's a question that's been occupying me for a while. What should I say about status for 15 minutes? Well, you'll be glad to know I've only got 3 slides, and there are no master maps, there are no rags, because you see all that stuff in other places. This isn't an open day. It needs to be big picture stuff. And I think status can only be understood if you think about where the programme is today, but also where it's recently come from. The direction of travel is really important because it tells you how much confidence you should have in the programme's eventual success, and that's what I want to talk about. So for a brief moment, let's just think back to last year. Last year, we needed to allow more time for industry testing for SIT than CR22 plan allowed for. SIT was more complex and challenging than we thought, and it required a rethink. So the new plan under CR55 was born, and whilst Ofcom approved that plan, they were minded to issue directions to ensure that there's no risk of future delay. And it is up to all of us to inspire confidence that we can keep to this plan, but also show the evidence to back it up. So, status. I want to look at programme status, not only in terms of whether things are happening, and they're happening as they should be, but also the more intangible and more human factors.
Keep the mic up, yeah.
You want to eat it?
We can't hear you on that.
Really? Okay, sorry about that. Maybe that's a good thing. So, looking at the more human factors as well. So you can see that, in my view, in early December, let's look at that one, just after the CR55 was approved, we felt that most people would recognise this as well. The programme was going through a period of quite great uncertainty. There were some good things happening, some certain things, but quite a lot of uncertainty as well. The levels of change were still quite high, complexity of testing was still quite high, resources were not always fully in place, and there were still many obstacles that needed to be overcome. So let's first of all look at that point of what we were certain about. And there were some good things in relation to that. Actually having the CR55 decision was important because the plan we were working to was an unapproved plan. It was a working assumption. Having that clarity and getting that decision on CR55 was important. And there was a big discussion about how long the extension should be for. Should it be too long? Is it too short? Is it just about in the right place? And that student programme plan being confirmed was a really important part of reducing the uncertainty at that point. Non-SIT LDSO testing was approved to start in December for a January start. And again, all participants, barring one, I think, which had the recovery plan at that point, was in a good place to start that. So again, good certainty at that point. The change freeze, well, it was confirmed, reconfirmed, applied, reapplied. We've kept a very close watching brief on changes. And in fact, there were still changes going through in December, like 58, 59, which actually were very supportive and pragmatic help improvements for delivery. And M7 was met Also, as Ofgem approved the implementation of the MHHS code changes, and CCAG approved unanimously that MS7 was met. The other thing that provided good certainty and good progress was migration consultation 3 was started and the forward roadmap was agreed, including the consultation 4 and the baselining of the framework. And finally, in terms of certainty, the supplier and agent qualification wave allocations were settled. There was the PPIR on the wave reallocations and a consultation on the QAD and approval of it. So those were the things that were certain at that point. But there was still a lot of uncertainty also. The directions were expected, but were not clear at that point, and it was conditioned that they would be part of the approval of CR55. SIT, the critical path activities, they weren't going too well at that time. So we had conducted the first 3 sprints of cycle 3, and they weren't going too well, and there was some doubt about keeping to the CR55 timeline at that point. We had probably experienced more design clarifications than we expected, and updates that we might have expected. But we were increasingly held up waiting for the big IR 8.4 release. So front running cohorts at that point was starting to have some difficulty, and at the same time, parties were having to deal with settlement testing, which was taking longer and experiencing huge levels of defects, more than 100 defects in settlement testing. So there were some challenges in relation to that. IR 8.4 and also upcoming further interim releases, which showed that site clarification was ongoing. Settlement testing in SIP-B, this was not progressing as needed at that point, and further sprints were required after Christmas. So there was concern also about service management testing, despite CR55 giving us more time before starting that phase. The service management operating manual was delayed, and its fitness for purpose in supporting the initial testing was under great scrutiny at that time. Concern existed about readiness for LDSOs in QT. Most of them were ready. As I said before, there was one that we were tracking that needed to be carefully monitored. And the early life support model was withheld until there was more clarity on performance assurance and service management arrangements. So at that point, and it was only 4 months ago, there was great uncertainty in the progress of activities to reach that critical path to M10, and putting the M10 timeline in question. Right, let's move on to where we are now. Oh, the animation is not working. Let's put it all up there. So where are we now? I would contend that the things feel very different, even though it's only 4 months. So a lot of uncertainty has been removed, and progress has been good. And some of the doubts in December that I outlined have been to some extent diluted. So a lot of uncertainty has been removed, and also the momentum has increased. And the belief that the programme will deliver per the existing plan is increasing all the time. And we see key programme phases starting on time, and in most cases proceeding as expected. And mainly our focus now is on phases completing on time, as opposed to getting them started in the first place. So let's look at how momentum has been increased. The SIT cycle 3 is now very positive, as was mentioned by Helen. Parties are really in their groove and making great progress through there. A lot of efforts by all parties to keep SIT going. We're expecting most of the cohorts to get through cycle 3 on the critical path timeline, which would be great. And it's been, as I say, a result of huge efforts. It's all goes well also for getting to a good position for migration start at M11. SIT settlement testing in SIT-B was concluded with those extra sprints, and that vindicated the approach we took with almost a full set of tests having been completed. I think there are only 2 remaining that have been carried over out of that phase. And given the complexity of settlement testing and the number of defects, that's a huge success. A SIT operational service management did start on time. Of course, it wasn't completed, and there's more to do on that. But to take a positive view, we did learn quite a lot in that phase. about what needs to be developed and tested before M10. Non-functional theme 1 started and completed on time. That's the phase of testing which could have yielded difficult defects that are hard to fix, but that was really good between Lexon, Helix and the DIB provider. And in fact, they did pre-testing to reduce the risk of that. So that's a great success to see. And the remaining SIT-B test stages are expected to start on time on Monday after SIT approval at the end of this week. And that will be the SIT non-functional and the rest of the SIT operational testing. Interim releases and change requests are diminishing and also test defects are reducing, which is always a good sign. And the operative directions are obviously becoming clearer now. And that certainty, it shouldn't be onerous, these directions, because it should be things you're doing anyway. And for any parties that are well organised and resourced and have the clarity of their plans, we think that's very supportive to the programme's delivery. On migration, consultation 3 was approved and 4 has been issued, and on track for baselining of the migration framework soon. There are, however, still hazards in relation to delivery going forward. If we just pick up a few of them, so greater clarity of the service management process is required. There are outstanding defects from service management testing, and resolving these will require a lot of work. For example, Lexon and Helix are defining and developing the inter-help desk processes with industry. And further service management testing will have to happen before M10, which will impact the parties because they'll need to find the capacity to accommodate that testing once the plan has been proposed by Lexon and Helix. Settlement testing in SIT A will be risky and we need to keep a close eye on that. It's only 4 weeks to do that. We have a plan for that and it's been very carefully monitored. Non-SIT LDSO testing, again, it's looking good. There's one party that's under scrutiny at the moment, but we're hopeful that all of those activities will happen as they need to. And the key thing, I guess, one of the big hazards is the capacity to manage what will probably be more parties qualifying more quickly as SIT goes through and more parties get to the end of SIT more quickly than we had expected. The programme needs to help support and manage the demand on code body capacity in relation to that. That's something we have to be careful about. And all parties for M10 need to be operationally ready, and that's being managed through the Go Live implementation group and the end-to-end assurance and monitoring that's going on. And finally, there will be more clarity on early life arrangements that will be required, and in relation to the delivery and the service management arrangements and performance assurance regimes. So it's really real progress, much greater momentum. It does mean much more confidence in the programme's ability to maintain CR55 and to reach M10 on time. So from what was only 4 months ago, it's been a real step up by everybody. Huge efforts, performance has increased everywhere. Everybody's in the groove. It's not just about testing. There's a lot of other work streams going on at the moment and set up. And after the break, Jason will be talking about M10 and the path to M10, because that's now our focus. To say testing is now, it's assumed it's going to start on time every phase. It's assumed that we will get it completed and done on time. This is more than just testing. This is everybody being ready for M10 where they need to be and moving on through the programme. So well done to everybody. The programme is in a good place, and I think that's the status I would leave you with.